Hello, welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is a review of Martyrs. I actually recorded this a few weeks ago. I listened to it back and wasn't happy with the final product. So for the first time ever, I've chucked out a whole review, chucked it in the bin and started all over again. Look at me, Dad. I'm doing it. So, Martyrs. This is continuing on from the Rough Cut Extreme Cinema season. This is the new one, which I've mentioned in previous episodes. Do look out for my previous episodes, they're great. And this is probably going to be followed by a horror season because I'm going back to my roots, like Mel Gibson, but less racist and probably slightly less objectionable. So I've done my best to avoid spoilers in this review, which at times means I'm being very vague and really beating around the bush, but I think if you watch the film you'll appreciate why I'm trying not to spoil it. So Martyrs is very difficult to define, and it's certainly not what I was expecting. In a sense, it is the revenge flick that I was expecting, that it sets itself up for in the opening act, and indeed the opening scenes are very, very traumatic. But it's no Last House on the Left, and it leaves the concept of revenge somewhere along the way. So the idea of revenge in this film is something of an intellectual dead end. And it is a film that makes you think of expressions like, it's an intellectual dead end, which gives you an idea that although this is sort of torture porn, it's not going to be of the same ilk as Saw or Hostel. So ultimately, if the subgenre of torture porn actually exists, and some people say it does, some people say it doesn't, then this is one of those. But it's got a brain in its head, very much so, and it's coming from an entirely different place than those awful Hostel Saw films that just went on and on and on. And I don't mean France. Actually, perhaps I do mean France. Perhaps if you give an American the brief to make a shocking and gross film, you end up with Hostel. And if you tell a Frenchman to do the same thing, you end up with something far deeper and ultimately far more troubling. Martyrs is arty, it's deeply concerned with the idea that suffering is somehow noble and potentially positive, and there is something more to us than our fleshy, squishy bodies. The fundamental idea here really is that through intense suffering, others can benefit. Perhaps it could serve arguably as a meta-analysis for us watching this film and trying to get something out of it. So we're watching these horrific scenes of prolonged torture and systematic torture as well. It's not sort of a crazy maniac hacking away at stuff. It's very much prolonged, it's very disciplined, and as a consequence I think it's a lot harsher and difficult to watch. A lot more difficult to watch, rather. It's using deliberately shocking images to provoke an intellectual response from the viewer. And while I can see the merit in that, it does irk me somewhat that they try to slip this in as under an 18 and saying, well, no, it's not just a horror film, it's intellectually important and therefore kids should be able to pay the money and see it. Because it's so deliberately shocking, I think that was a bit underhanded of them that they tried to play that card, and I really don't think that's appropriate. If you're going to make a film that's this strong and this harsh, you have to say, kids should not be watching this stuff, and they really shouldn't be watching this stuff. I think what really pulls the film off for me is the relationship between the two female leads. I think that's really sweet, and that's really where they get away with a lot of the stuff that I was a bit concerned about. I don't want to talk about specifics. The film's called Martyrs, which kind of makes sense in the end. You understand why. It's really, really shocking, really horrible stuff happens, but there is a point to it all. You're either going to, like me, think, wow, that was really interesting and I can appreciate it, and it's been gnawing on my mind for the days and weeks since I've seen it. It's been nagging at me, not necessarily in a good way, but it has been making me think. Or you're going to say, this is Eurotrash nonsense, this is sick for the sake of being sick. I think that's unfair. I think there's more to it than that, but it's really a film that you can't be told. You have to make your own mind up, and you absolutely will make your own mind up. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.